Welcome back to Another World Audiobooks. Thank you guys for tuning in. It's so good to have you here. As always, I have to give a huge shout out to our patrons who make this show possible and who get awesome stuff as a result of being patrons. They get books early, they get full audiobooks, they get bonus audiobooks as well. That brand new version of Frankenstein that just came out, that is available to all patrons who sign up on the $5 a month or more tier. And if you go higher than the $5 a month tier, there's even more bonuses and awesome stuff that comes with that, so definitely check that out. But huge shout out to Julie, who just recently signed up. Thank you, Julie, for getting signed up there, and really appreciate your support and everyone's support who supports the show through the Patreon. It is cool too to be able to have we've got a group chat going there where I'm sharing stuff that's come out, and huge shout out to Bethany as well, who shared her Another World audiobook sticker that she's got on her laptop. So that is really cool. It's so cool to see stuff like that out in the wild. Just makes my heart happy. So I am super excited today. Besides just excited to have this podcast in general, I'm excited to be bringing a brand new audiobook to you. That is right. And I'm also excited because I feel like I've hacked my setup finally. I've got a microphone that I really love. I don't know if you guys like the sound, but I like the sound. I think it sounds fantastic. I love the timbre of this microphone. But I also love the fact that my sound treatment and everything that I've got set up allows me to have a fan running behind me. It's the middle of the summer, and I'm usually dying when I'm recording audiobooks, and I've been recording a lot recently, which is awesome. But sometimes I do get way too hot, and that's not a fun way to record audiobooks. So I have this nice, very extremely quiet fan. You can't even hear it. It's running in the background right now and you can't even hear it, which is awesome. So I'm happy in a lot of different ways. Happy to be starting a new audiobook, happy to for our awesome patrons who are supporting the show, and happy for a nice silent fan and a good microphone that is making recording a much more pleasurable experience these days. Anyway, speaking of new books, The Scarlet Pimpernel. This was a suggestion from one of our patrons. So like I said, it definitely pays to be a patron. I think we've talked about this before, but I love the progenitors of what we see in pop culture today. And I think a lot of that is found in these type of books. So, I mean, before you had Zorro, he's an old character. Before you had Batman, who's also a crazy old character, there was a person with a secret identity, and his name was the Scarlet Pimpernel. So a little history on this. Baroness Emma Orczy published the novel. I looked that up. I think that's how you pronounce that. I'm pretty sure. Orczy published the novel in 1905, but the story actually began as a stage play that she wrote with her husband in 1903. The play was rejected by pretty much every theater in London before it finally got its chance, and when it did, audiences went absolutely wild for it. So the novel, The Scarlet Pimpernel, followed, and it became one of the best-selling books of the early 20th century. Orczy went on to write over a dozen sequels and spin-offs because readers simply refused to let Percy Blakeney go. So the historical backdrop is the French Revolution, specifically the Reign of Terror. So it's a very grim period, beginning in 1793, when the revolutionary government was sending French aristocrats to the... I was going to bring this up separately, but I might as well just do it right now. I have kids, and they watch the Aristocats, and I grew up watching the Aristocats. So every single time that I have had to say the word aristocrat in this book, I have had to fix it because I have said Aristocat. So, oh my goodness, maybe by the end of the book I'll get it right, but I have said Aristocat every single time, and I just did it again. Anyway. They were sending the aristocrats to the guillotine by the thousands. So Orczy was a Hungarian by birth and had lived across Europe and brought an outsider's eye to both French and English society that gives a novel a fascinating tension between the two worlds. So she created Sir Percy Blakeney, something new. It was really the first modern superhero in literature. He's a wealthy man who adopts a foolish public persona, I guess you'd say, kind of like a Bruce Wayne, to disguise his secret heroic identity. It's a very familiar trope that has been used over and over through the years, but I think you can say that the Scarlet Pimpernel was definitely one of the progenitors of this particular way of doing things in a story. So pretty much every masked hero that came after owes something to this book. It is an amazing adventure story. It's got romance. It's got kind of that spy thriller side to it. There's costume drama all at once. And this book is absolutely awesome. So I am so excited to get into this. And I'm so that it was glad that it was suggested by a patron. And again, being a patron has a lot of perks. So not everybody who suggests books to the podcast necessarily get their their wish. But patrons get to that consideration first and foremost for sure. And this is, again, be an awesome book, and I'm so looking forward to doing it. My goal, as always with all the other audiobooks, is to get super far ahead so that the patrons get all of the content as early as possible. So I'm not exactly sure what the scheduling and like publishing schedule is going to be, but the goal will be for all the patrons to get these chapters and potentially even the full book. That's kind of my goal. That's a big goal, but I'm gonna definitely try for it. If you're not aware, or if I don't drop some kind of announcement that you don't see, go check out anotherworldaudiobooks.com and click on the patron perks. One way or the other, patrons are going to get content early, so make sure to check that out and stay tuned. Sign up to be a patron. It's $5 a month. You get all the episodes early. You get full bonus episode or full bonus audiobooks, entire audiobooks that aren't playing on the podcast feed in general. So I try to make it worth your while, and the hundreds and hundreds of hours that have gone into this podcast, if you've gotten any enjoyment out of that, $5 a month just means the world and allows me to continue to do this. It is definitely a labor of love, and definitely not going to replace my day job anytime soon. So if you do want to continue to hear the podcast and have these continue to come out, sign up to be a patron today, and I promise I will do my best to make it worth your while. I feel like it's kind of it's a pact between the producer, the person who's actually putting out the content, and the patron. If you want to be a patron, I'm gonna do everything I can to make that something that is actually worth your while. So again, go check that out. It's at anotherworldaudiobooks.com. Links are in the description of the podcast as well. Well, that was a long intro, but I had a lot of information to get out to you. Hope you enjoyed some of that background on the novel. I think it's crazy, too, the difference, especially America's 250 being this year and everything, the difference between the French Revolution and the American Revolution. If you've never researched that, I would highly recommend it. I don't want to get too much into it right now, but the difference between the American Revolution and how we had liberty under law, whereas the French government had just straight liberty, just kind of this anarchy that took over. It's a crazy difference, and I think there's a lot of factors that went into that, but liberty under law was the American system and what our founding fathers kind of put into place and had a huge impact. France has kind of figured things out since then, thankfully, but the difference between the American Revolution and the French Revolution, I'd highly recommend you look into that. If you're interested, maybe I'll do a bonus episode and kind of dive into that a bit more, because I find it fascinating. So anyway, without further ado, let's get into the first chapter of The Scarlet Pimpernel. The Scarlet Pimpernel. Written by Baroness Ormsey. Narrated by Brady Smith. Chapter 1. Paris, September 1792. A surging, seething, murmuring crowd of beings that are human only in name, for to the eye and ear they seem naught but savage creatures, animated by vile passions, and by the lust of vengeance and of hate. The hour, some little time before sunset, and the place, the West Barricade, at the very spot where, a decade later, a proud tyrant raised an undying monument to the nation's glory and his own vanity. During the greater part of the day, the guillotine had been kept busy at its ghastly work. All that France had boasted of in the past centuries, of ancient names and blue blood, had paid toll to her desire for liberty and for fraternity. The carnage had only ceased at this late hour of the day, because there were other more interesting sights for the people to witness, a little while before the final closing of the barricades for the night. And so the crowd rushed away from the Place de la Grève, and made for the various barricades in order to watch this interesting and amusing sight. It was to be seen every day, for those aristos were such fools. They were traitors to the people, of course, all of them, men, women, and children, who happened to be descendants of the great men who since the Crusades had made the glory of France. Her old noblesse. Their ancestors had oppressed the people, had crushed them under the scarlet heels of their dainty buckled shoes. And now the people had become the rulers of France, and crushed their former masters, not beneath their heel, for they went shoeless mostly in these days, but beneath a more effectual weight, the knife of the guillotine. and daily, hourly, the hideous instrument of torture claimed its many victims: old men, young women, tiny children, even until the day when it would finally demand the head of a king and of a beautiful young queen. But this was as it should be. Were not the people now the rulers of France? Every aristocrat was a traitor, as his ancestors had been before him. For 200 years now, the people had sweated and toiled and starved to keep a lustful court in lavish extravagance. Now, the descendants of those who had helped to make those courts brilliant had to hide for their lives, to fly if they wished to avoid the tardy vengeance of the people. And they did try to hide, and tried to fly. That was just the fun of the whole thing. Every afternoon before the gates closed and the market carts went out in procession by the various barricades, some fool of an aristo endeavored to evade the clutches of the Committee of Public Safety. In various disguises, under various pretexts, they tried to slip through the barriers which were so well guarded by citizen soldiers of the Republic. Men in women's clothes, women in male attire, children disguised in beggars' rags. There were some of all sorts. Ci-devant counts, marquises, even dukes who wanted to fly from France, reach England or some other equally accursed country, and there try to rouse foreign feeling against the glorious revolution, or to raise an army in order to liberate the wretched prisoners in the Temple, who had once called themselves sovereigns of France. But they were nearly always caught at the barricades. Sergeant Bibou, especially at the West Gate, had a wonderful nose for scenting an aristo in the most perfect disguise. Then, of course, the fun began. Bibou would look at his prey as a cat looks upon the mouse, play with him, sometimes for quite a quarter of an hour, pretend to be hoodwinked by the disguise, by the wigs and other bits of theatrical make-up which hid the identity of a ci-devant noble, marquis, or count. Oh, Bibou had a keen sense of humour, and it was well worth hanging round that west barricade in order to see him catch an aristo in the very act of trying to flee from the vengeance of the people. Sometimes Bibou would let his prey actually out by the gates, allowing him to think for the space of 2 minutes at least that he really had escaped out of Paris, and might even manage to reach the coast of England in safety. But Bibou would let the unfortunate wretch walk about 10 meters toward the open country. Then he would send 2 men after him and bring him back, stripped of his disguise. Oh, that was extremely funny, for as often as not the fugitive would prove to be a woman, some proud marchioness, who looked terribly comical when she found herself in Bibou's clutches after all, and knew that a summary trial would await her the next day, and after that the fond embrace of Madame la Guillotine. No wonder that on this fine afternoon in September, the crowd round Bibou's gate was eager and excited. The lust of blood grows with its satisfaction. There is no satiety. The crowd had seen 100 noble heads fall beneath a guillotine today. It wanted to make sure that it would see another 100 fall on the morrow. Bibou was sitting on an overturned and empty cask close by the gate of the barricade. A small detachment of citoyen soldiers was under his command. The work had been very hot lately. Those cursed aristos were becoming terrified and tried their hardest to slip out of Paris. Men, women, and children, whose ancestors, even in remote ages, had served those traitorous Bourbons, were all traitors themselves, and ripe food for the guillotine. Every day, Bibou had had the satisfaction of unmasking some fugitive royalists and sending them back to be tried by the Committee of Public Safety, presided over by that good patriot, Citoyen Fouquier-Tinville. Robespierre and Danton both had commended Bibou for his zeal, and Bibou was proud of the fact that he, on his own initiative, had sent at least 50 aristos to the guillotine. But today, all the sergeants in command at the various barricades had had special orders. Recently, a great number of aristos had succeeded in escaping out of France, and in reaching England safely. There were curious rumours about these escapes. They had become very frequent and singularly daring. The people's minds were becoming strangely excited about it all. Sergeant Grospierre had been sent to the guillotine for allowing a whole family of aristos to slip out of the north gate under his very nose. It was asserted that these escapes were organized by a band of Englishmen, whose daring seemed to be unparalleled, and who, from sheer desire to meddle in what did not concern them, spent their spare time in snatching away lawful victims destined for Madame la Guillotine. These rumors soon grew in extravagance. There was no doubt that this band of meddlesome Englishmen did exist. Moreover, they seemed to be under the leadership of a man whose pluck and audacity were almost fabulous. Strange stories were afloat of how he and those aristos whom he rescued became suddenly invisible as they reached the barricades and escaped out of the gates by sheer supernatural agency. No one had seen these mysterious Englishmen. As for their leader, he was never spoken of, save with a superstitious shudder. Citoyen Fouquier-Tinville would in the course of the day receive a scrap of paper from some mysterious source. Sometimes he would find it in the pocket of his coat. At others, it would be handed to him by someone in the crowd, whilst he was on his way to the sitting of the Committee of Public Safety. The paper always contained a brief notice that the band of meddlesome Englishmen were at work, and it was always signed with a device drawn in red. A little star-shaped flower, which we in England call the Scarlet Pimpernel. Within a few hours of the receipt of this impudent notice, the citoyens of the Committee of Public Safety would hear that so many royalists and aristocrats had succeeded in reaching the coast, and were on their way to England and safety. The guards at the gates had been doubled, the sergeants in command had been threatened with death, whilst liberal rewards were offered for the capture of these daring and impudent Englishmen. There was a sum of 5,000 francs promised to the man who laid hands on the mysterious and elusive Scarlet Pimpernel. Everyone felt that Bibu would be that man, and Bibu allowed that belief to take firm root in everybody's mind. And so, day after day, people came to watch him at the west gate, so as to be present when he laid hands on any fugitive aristo who perhaps might be accompanied by that mysterious Englishman. "Bah!" he said to his trusted corporal. "Citoyen Grospierre was a fool. Had it been me now, at that north gate last week." Citoyen Bibu spat on the ground to express his contempt for his comrade's stupidity. "How did it happen, citoyen?" asked the corporal. "Grospierre was at the gate, keeping good watch," began Bibu pompously, as the crowd closed in round him, listening eagerly to his narrative. "We've all heard of this meddlesome Englishman, this accursed Scarlet Pimpernel. He won't get through my gate, morbleu, unless he be the devil himself. But Grospierre was a fool. The market carts were going through the gates. There was one laden with casks, and driven by an old man with a boy beside him. Grospierre was a bit drunk, but he thought himself very clever. He looked into the casks, most of them at least, and saw they were empty, and let the cart go through." A murmur of wrath and contempt went round the group of ill-clad wretches who crowded round Citoyen Bibu. "Half an hour later," continued the sergeant, "up comes the captain of the guard with a squad of some dozen soldiers with him. "Has a cart gone through?" he asks Grospierre breathlessly. "Yes," says Grospierre, "not a half hour ago." "And you have let them escape?" shouts the captain furiously. "You go to the guillotine for this, citoyen sergeant. That cart had concealed ci-devant Duc de Chalice and all his family." "What?" thunders Grospierre, aghast. "Aye, and the driver was none other than the cursed Englishman, the Scarlet Pimpernel." A howl of execration greeted this tale. Citoyen Grospierre had paid for his blunder on the guillotine, but what a fool! Oh, what a fool! Bibu was laughing so much at his own tale that it was some time before he could continue. "After them, my men!" shouts the captain, he said after a while. "Remember their reward! After them! They cannot have gone far!" And with that he rushes to the gate, followed by his dozen soldiers. "But it was too late!" shouted the crowd excitedly. "They never got them! Curse that Grospierre for his folly! He deserves his fate! Fancy not examining those casks properly!" But these sallies seemed to amuse Citoyen Bibu exceedingly. He laughed until his sides ached and the tears streamed down his cheeks. "Nay, nay," he said at last. "Those aristos weren't in the cart. The driver was not the Scarlet Pimpernel." "What?" "No, the captain of the guard was that silly Englishman in disguise, and every one of his soldiers aristos." The crowd this time said nothing. The story certainly savoured of the supernatural. And though the Republic had abolished God, it had not quite succeeded in killing the fear of the supernatural in the hearts of the people. Truly, that Englishman must be the devil himself. The sun was sinking low down in the west. Bibu prepared himself to close the gates. "En avant the carts," he said. Some dozen covered carts were drawn up in a row, ready to leave town, in order to fetch the produce from the country close by for market the next morning. They were mostly well known to Bibu, as they went through his gate twice every day on their way to and from the town. He spoke to one or two of the drivers, mostly women, and was at great pains to examine the inside of the carts. "You never know," he would say, "and I'm not going to be cut like that fool Grospierre." The women who drove the carts usually spent their day on the Place de la Grève, beneath the platform of the guillotine, knitting and gossiping, whilst they watched the rows of tumbrils arriving with the victims the reign of terror claimed every day. It was great fun to see the aristos arriving for the reception of Madame la Guillotine, and the places close by the platform were very much sought after. Bibu, during the day, had been on duty on the place. He recognized most of the old hags, tricoteuses, as they were called, who sat there and knitted, whilst head after head fell beneath the knife, and they themselves got quite bespattered with the blood of those cursed aristos. "Eh, les mères," said Bibu to one of these horrible hags. "What have you got there?" He had seen her earlier in the day, with her knitting and the whip of her cart close beside her. Now she had fastened a row of curly locks on the whip handle, all colours, from gold to silver, fair to dark, and she stroked them with her huge, bony fingers as she laughed at Bibu.
"I made friends with Madame Guillotine's lover," she said with a coarse laugh. "He cut these off for me from the hedge as they rode down. He has promised me some more tomorrow, but I don't know if I shall be at my usual place."
"Ah, how is that, la mère?" asked Bibu, who, hardened soldier though he was, could not help shuddering at the awful loathsomeness of this semblance of a woman, with her ghastly trophy on the handle of her whip.
"My grandson has got the smallpox,"
she said with a jerk of her thumb towards the inside of her cart.
"Some say it's the plague. If it is, I shan't be allowed to come into Paris tomorrow."
At the first mention of the word smallpox, Bibu had stepped hastily backwards, and when the old hag spoke of the plague, he retreated from her as fast as he could. "Curse you!" he muttered, whilst the whole crowd hastily avoided the cart, leaving it standing all alone in the midst of the place. The old hag laughed.
"Curse you, citoyen, for being a coward," she said. "Bah! What a man to be afraid of sickness!"
"Morbleu, the plague!" Everyone was awestruck and silent, filled with horror for the loathsome malady, the one thing which still had the power to arouse terror and disgust in these savage, brutalized creatures. "Get out with you and your plague-stricken brood!" shouted Bibu hoarsely. And with another rough laugh and coarse jest, the old hag whipped up her lean nag and drove her cart out of the gate. This incident had spoilt the afternoon. The people were terrified of these two horrible curses, the two maladies which nothing could cure, and which were the precursors of an awful and lonely death. They hung about the barricades, silent and sullen for a while, eyeing one another suspiciously, avoiding each other as if by instinct, lest the plague lurked already in their midst. Presently, as in the case of Grospierre, a captain of the guard appeared suddenly. But he was known to Bibu, and there was no fear of his turning out to be a sly Englishman in disguise. "A cart!" he shouted breathlessly, even before he had reached the gates. "What cart?" asked Bibu roughly. "Driven by an old hag, a cavalry cart." "There were a dozen." "An old hag who said her son has a plague?" "Yes." "You have not let him go?" "Morbleu!" said Bibu, whose purple cheeks had suddenly become white with fear. The car contained the ci-devant Comtesse de Ternay and the 2 children, all of them traitors and condemned to death. And the driver? Muttered Bibu, as a superstitious shudder ran down his spine. Sacré tonnerre, said the captain, but it is feared that it was that accursed Englishman himself, the Scarlet Pimpernel. Oh my goodness. Now, I don't want you to do it yet, because I think you should listen to the book, the full book, the whole book, nothing but the book, before you actually get into the movie, if you haven't watched the movie before. If you have watched the movie before, I think this will definitely just add to your experience. But I'd say read the book, listen to the book, and then go watch, there's a 82, I want to say, version of the Scarlet Pimpernel. There was a movie done, and I grew up watching that, and I loved it. It was such a good book, or such a good movie, based on this book, and really enjoyed it as a kid, and even as an adult, I've loved sharing it with other people as well. So there's just some of the accents and the ways that I'm going through the story. I'm like, yes, I'm so excited. I get to kind of take what I loved in the movie and bring it to life with this audio production. So a few vocabulary words. I have a feeling there's going to be quite a few with this being a French influenced novel. Tumbril is the first word here. It's a cart which opens at the back to release its load. It's also a kind of medieval torture device, I guess. That's an interesting synonym, but I think they're referring to the cart here in the story. Execration, I know we've had that as a vocabulary word before, but I need to reinforce it with repetition, apparently, is the act of cursing. So execration, that's a good word for cursing. Good word. Yeah. Anyway, sacré tonnerre, it means holy smokes in French, I guess. I love some of these French expressions. They're pretty funny. Tricoteuse is literally just French word for knitters. There's people that knit. Tricoteuse. So that's what those old ladies underneath the guillotine were called. So anyway, there you go. Some vocabulary words for the day. Again, hope you guys are enjoying this so far. With just the first chapter, I am hooked, and I hope you are too. If you are, make sure you go to anotherworldaudiobooks.com, click on Patron Perks, and sign up to become a patron. Just $5 a month gets you all of these episodes early, and potentially, if I can get it done, the entire full audiobook early, as well as bonus books that aren't available on the podcast feed that will be available to patrons only, including the brand new version of Frankenstein. So definitely make sure to check that out. Again, anotherworldaudiobooks.com. Sign up to be a patron. Again, if you find any value in this podcast, if you enjoy it in any way, shape, or form, it would mean the world to me to have your support in that way. So if you can't support the podcast, though, like I always say, all that I ask is that you just tell other people about the podcast. Spread the word, help us grow the podcast, and that is how we stay on the air and continue to bring you these awesome free audiobooks. So thanks again just for listening, and again sharing the podcast, and thank you again to our patrons who make this show possible. I'm so excited to be starting another book on the podcast. I can't believe I've lost count. I should probably go count, see how many books we've actually done. It's been a ton. We're pushing up on 500 episodes. It's just been fantastic, and I'm so glad to be able to continue to do this. So thanks for coming along for the ride, and we will catch you next week.
This episode is brought to you by ChatGPT. Hey, it's Bill Simmons from the Bill Simmons Podcast. Have you guys heard about ChatGPT work? It's the new way to use ChatGPT for bigger multi-step projects. And when you need more than just answers, give ChatGPT work access to your apps and files, and it can create real work documents like spreadsheets, slides, and structured reports. Get started at chatgpt.com by selecting work mode, available on Plus and Pro plans.
At ZocDoc, we know being a healthy adult is like living in a video game. Every day has side quests, taxes, laundry, birthdays, and just when you're leveling up, you have to book a doctor. The insurance portal crashes, they put you on hold, your doctor doesn't take your plan, game over. We see you, so we made booking a doctor easy. Download ZocDoc, search by specialty, insurance, and availability. Book instantly, no cheat codes required. Find a doctor you love with ZocDoc.
Look what TJ Maxx dragged in.
The Devil Wears Prada 2 is now streaming on Disney Plus and Hulu.
We are digital, we are downloadable, we are streamable.
The fashion event of the year is certified fresh.
Pull yourself together, we have work to do.
Critics say it's smart and witty and the perfect sequel.
That's all.
Get runway ready for The Devil Wears Prada 2 on Disney Plus and Hulu. Rated PG-13.
I'm Glenn Washington, host of Snap Judgment, the award-winning storytelling podcast from KQED. Every week, Snap deals a new card, like the girl whose sister was a monkey, or the man who lived in the woods for 30 years, or even the woman who snuck her lover out of prison in a dog crate. Pick a card, any card. Tap to listen now to Snap Judgment from KQED on Spotify.